Scientifically speaking, current road traffic with mixed, human-driven vehicles is an inherently risky and suboptimal system. It accepts predictable, repeatable collisions with fatal and severe consequences, while the underlying laws of nature, human performance limits, and principles clearly indicate that this is avoidable to levels considered unacceptable in other engineering systems. The core is simple classical mechanics. The kinetic energy of a moving object is energy is half times the mass times the speed squared. That energy scales quadratically with speed. At typical highway speeds of 80 to 130 kilometers per hour and masses of 1 to 2 tons, the energy in a collision is enormous. Human tissue and bones have limited tolerance for accelerations and forces, biomechanical limits, known from crash tests and trauma research. A pedestrian or cyclist struck by a vehicle above approximately 30 to 40 kilometers per hour has a greatly increased risk of fatal injury. At higher speeds, that risk increases dramatically. In a system with mixed traffic, participants cause cyclists, pedestrians, trucks on the same or intersecting infrastructure with large speed differences and arbitrary trajectories. Energy transfer in the event of a collision is almost inevitable. This is not an accident in the sense of a rare coincidence, but a predictable consequence of the design. Choice high mass times high speed times proximity of vulnerable bodies. In amusement parks, factories, or aviation, exactly the same physical principles are used to eliminate or drastically reduce risk shielding, speed limiting, energy absorbing structures, separation of flows. In road traffic, that separation is largely neglected. Human control introduces systematic sources of error that have been well mapped scientifically. Human factors in aerodynamics. Reaction times typically range between 0.5 and 2 seconds under ideal conditions and are longer with fatigue, distraction, or poor visibility. Visual attention is limited. Foveal vs peripheral perception, working memory and decision-making are limited, and individual variation, age, skill medication, alcohol fatigue is significant. Research consistently shows that human error is a contributing factor in 80 to 94% of collisions. A delayed detection, misjudgment of distance and speed, distraction, or exceeding one's own limits. The system is largely designed as if the driver were an ideal, always alert machine. This contradicts empirical data on human performance. The Civ system approach, including Vision Zero, explicitly acknowledges this infrastructure, and vehicles must be designed so that normal human errors do not lead to serious injury or death. Current mixed traffic fails to do this efficiently. Worldwide, an estimated 1.19 million people die in road traffic every year, who date to around 2021. It is the leading cause of death among children and young adults aged 5 to 29. In the Netherlands, there were 675 traffic fatalities in 2024, CBS, with a decrease of 42% compared to 2000, but stagnation or a slight increase in recent years, and an increasing share of cyclists. These are not rare outliers, but structural numbers that recur annually. The number of seriously injured runs into the thousands to tens of thousands. The risks are orders of magnitude higher than in highly separated systems such as rail or commercial aviation, per passenger kilometer. Comparison with other risks in many countries, the numbers exceed the murders. Air pollution from exhaust fumes, particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, etc. contributes to respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and increased cancer risks via known toxicological and epidemiological mechanisms. This is not intentional causation, at least that is what people say or claim, of course, but a foreseeable side effect of the technological choice for internal combustion engines in open, mixed traffic. You just do it. Why is irrelevant. It is not intentional, but still isn't it? Alternatives that address the scientific objections. Physical and systems technical solutions exist that significantly reduce or eliminate the risk factors. Separation of flows. Separate infrastructure for high-speed vehicles versus vulnerable users. such as in rail or dedicated lanes. Automation systems without human reaction time and attention limits can respond more predictably and consistently. Lower speeds and smaller masses where separation is not possible, plus energy-absorbing designs. Modalities with intrinsically lower kinetic energy or better controlled train, metro, well-designed cycling infrastructure, etc. These are not hypothetical ideals. The underlying laws of nature, energy, momentum, human biomechanics, and cognition show that the risks can be orders of magnitude lower. Absolute 100% safety is impossible in any real physical system. Material fatigue, rare failures, external factors, but the difference between the current system and rigorously designed alternatives is large and measurable. Maintaining a system in which high kinetic energies, human performance limits, and mixed flows systematically produce collisions, all knowledge of physics, biomechanics, and human factors has demonstrated for decades how to avoid or drastically limit this, is inconsistent with the way other engineering systems are evaluated. In amusement parks or factories, a similar residual risk, hundreds of deaths and thousands of serious injuries per year in a small country, would be considered an unacceptable design failure. The data shows that current traffic does not meet that standard. That is, the scientific reason why it can be labeled stupid. It ignores known, quantifiable laws in favor of a historically evolved configuration that continues to produce predictable suffering. Current traffic is not only inherently risky due to the physics of kinetic energy and human limits, but it is also a historically evolved system that, with systematic long-term thinking, could have been, should have been, and still can be different from a scientific perspective. System analysis, optimization under the laws of nature, and engineering principles. The design of mixed, human-driven traffic with high masses and speeds is a suboptimal choice. The relevant laws, momentum, energy being half times mass times velocity squared, biomechanical tolerances of human tissue, and human cognitive and reaction limitations have long been known or could be derived. With foresighted systems thinking, one could have designed infrastructure and modalities that structurally respect these limits, separating flows, limiting kinetic energies where vulnerable bodies are present, minimizing or eliminating human sources of error, and maximizing energy and material efficiency, alternatives that remove the disadvantages. There are countless conceptual and technical alternatives that combine precisely the required properties. They do not rely on details of execution, but on the underlying principles: separation of traffic flows with different speeds, masses, and vulnerability. Systems with intrinsically lower or better controlled kinetic energy. Control without the known human performance limits, reaction time, attention, variation. Modalities that waste less energy per trip, produce fewer emissions, and generate less wear or collision energy. Based on the same laws of nature and engineering logic, these alternatives systematically deliver the benefits that the current system lacks. 100% safer in the sense of orders of magnitude lower chance of serious injury or death, comparable to how amusement parks, factories, or rail and aviation manage their risks. Cheaper due to the elimination of the enormous external costs of collisions, injuries, downtime, repairs, and medical care. Faster and more efficient through more predictable flow without the chaos of human errors and conflict points. More sustainable, greener, and cleaner through lower energy input per useful trip, less wear and tear, lower emissions, and less material loss in collisions. More enjoyable due to the elimination of stress, anxiety, unpredictability, and the constant threat of injury. The result is a modern, futuristic transport system that functions safely and cleanly instead of a predictable source of deaths, injuries, suffering, hospital burden, and societal damage. Absolute zero risk is impossible in any physical system, but the difference compared to the current residual risk is large, measurable, and has been known for decades. Why has this not been done, and what does clinging to it mean? With the available knowledge of physics, biomechanics, and system optimization, One could have chosen configurations at an early stage that structurally exclude known failure modes. That is exactly what happens in other technical domains. One does not accept a design that systematically produces deaths and serious injury when better options exist. In traffic, that standard has not been applied. Maintaining the current system, while scientific facts show that safer, more efficient, cleaner, and cheaper alternatives are and were possible, is inconsistent from a purely rational scientific perspective. It means consciously or tacitly accepting predictable disadvantages, deaths, injuries, chronic suffering, medical costs, economic loss, while those disadvantages are avoidable. In that sense, one is jointly responsible for the residual risk that one perpetuates. A society that has the potential for a safe, clean, and efficient transport system, yet clings to a configuration that systematically produces chaos, deaths, misery, illness, and costs, is not acting in accordance with the optimization principles that are self-evident elsewhere in engineering. That is, strictly speaking, irrational. It ignores known laws and available improvements in favor of a historical path that demonstrably scores worse on virtually all objective criteria: safety, energy, reliability, damage. Whether one calls that stupid, crazy, or something else is a matter of semantics. Scientifically, it is a clear suboptimality. One chooses a system whose disadvantages are foreseeable and avoidable, while the benefits of the alternatives are likewise foreseeable and substantial. It can be done differently. It could have been done differently. It should have been done differently. And as long as it is not done, a known damage continues to be tolerated. Conclusion: if you look at the state of affairs with common sense, you may conclude that when observing traffic, you can view everyone involved as a bunch of stupid morons. With all due respect to people with Down syndrome, who do understand all of this, and think it's stupid too. Now go ahead and sow death and destruction with your car, cause accidents, and ruin the environment and health.